My dear brothers and sisters, as we continue our examination of Dua Kumayl, last week we examined the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dua Kumayl starts with the mercy of God. Oh Allah, I ask you, by your mercy that has encompassed everything. And that's the beauty of this prayer. That out of all the attributes of Allah, we start with the mercy of God. Just hearing a phrase like that generates so much hope in your heart. It really gives comfort to your heart when you hear that the rahmah of Allah, the mercy of Allah, has encompassed everything in existence. Then the following excerpt, the following statement in Dua Kumayl, the Imam alayhi salam states, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, because this dua is narrated from Imam Ali alayhi salam, وَبِقُدْرَتِكَ الَّتِي قَهَرْتَ بِهَا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Oh Allah, and I ask you by your power, by which you have dominated everything. The power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is dominant. Nothing can come close to the power of Allah. Nothing can match the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The power of Allah is His essence, therefore it is infinite. One question that you commonly hear, especially with maybe some professors, philosophers, who would like to limit the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm sure many of you have heard this at school. How many of you have heard this fallacy or this misconception or this objection? Can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create something so heavy, for example a rock, that's so heavy that He can't lift? Have you heard of this? Can God create a rock so heavy that He can't lift? He cannot lift. If you say yes, then you're limiting the power of God. You're saying yes, He can create a rock that He can't lift. If you say no, then you're negating His power. So you're doomed either way, right? You've seen them do this in school sometimes. And every day you hear this fallacy, and they're like, see, there are some things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot do, so don't say that His power is unlimited. This is a fallacy, my dear brothers and sisters, and the response to that is very simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no deficiency in His power. But this supposition itself is flawed and does not have the capacity to exist. I'll give you a very quick example. Who is the best mathematician in the world today? Does anyone know? I don't, but I'm wondering if maybe you know. Who's a top mathematician, like a big name in math and statistics and computing? Bill Gates is good with software, but we're talking about someone who's top in math. Pythagoras. Okay, let's say not in our modern time. In the past, if you get Pythagoras and you tell him, look, you're the top mathematician of your time. Here, look at this equation, 2 plus 2 equals 5. Look at this equation. I want you, as the most powerful mathematician of your era, I want you to make this equation 2 plus 2 equals 5, not 4. Make it equals 5, can you? Now if Pythagoras says, it's not possible, can you come and tell him, oh, so you're a deficient mathematician? You don't have that much power. If you were a stronger mathematician, then you would have probably achieved this. You could have made 2 plus 2 equals 5. What's the response to this? The response to this is that this is a logical fallacy. 2 plus 2, if we assume that this entity is 2, and we keep it at 2, plus another 2, logically is 4. It does not have the capacity to be 5. Yes, if you change the digit to 3, it can become 5. 2 plus 3 equals 5. But 2 plus 2 does not have the capacity itself to become 5. Therefore, the deficiency is not in the mathematician. The equation itself is helpless, let's say, so to speak. It does not have the capacity to exist. These arguments can be addressed in the following way. It's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't create a rock so heavy that He can't lift. Such a supposition in the external world does not have the capacity to exist. Or sometimes they'll ask you the question, can God create another God? Another God does not have the capacity to exist when you have one God who's unlimited, who's infinitely powerful. This means that no other God has the capacity to exist. So the deficiency, the flaw is not in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's in that thing which doesn't have the capacity to exist. Another example that I'll quickly share with you. I remember once when I was in high school, my professor in one of the classes asked this question. Now the professor was teaching a philosophy class, but at the same time he was the coach of the swimming team at the school. So I asked him the following question. I told him, Professor, are you a good swimmer? He said, yes, of course. I mean, I have to be. If I'm the coach of the school's team, I've got to be a good swimmer. I told him, okay, let me ask you this question. Or let me give you this challenge, actually. Swim right here in class. Swim. Let's see how you swim. You say you're the best swimmer here. Okay, let's see your capabilities. He's like, what do you mean? That's ridiculous. There's no water here. I told him, so is the problem then in you? Or in the room which doesn't have the capacity to allow for someone to swim? Then I told the students, see this poor guy, this poor professor, he can't swim. He's admitting that he can't swim over here. So he got the idea. I told him, take this idea at a very basic level and apply it to the question that you asked us. The deficiency is not in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather the deficiency or the weakness is in the supposition that you are making. So the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely unlimited, brothers and sisters. Nothing limits the power of Allah. And really, if you want to analyze the mercy of God, the mercy of Allah lies in His power. You as a human being, as a servant of God, never lose hope when you know that Allah is the source of all power in the universe. Why does the Quran consider hopelessness, despair, as disbelief, a type of kufr? إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala consider losing hope in Him disbelief? In fact, the biggest sin in the religion of Islam is what? Losing hope from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's considered one of the biggest sins, if not the biggest sin. Why? Because when you lose hope in the mercy of Allah and the power of Allah, you're actually doubting the power of God. When you lose hope, that means, oh Allah, I don't think you can get me out of this. I don't think you can help me because you don't have the power to help me. That's what it amounts to. Think about it. That's what it amounts to. A believer always reminds himself or herself that nothing can stand in between you being helped and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The power of God is above everything. Never lose hope. Losing hope, feeling stuck, and that your situation will not change is actually doubting the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're doubting God Himself, and that's an act of disbelief. We as believers have full hope in the power of Allah. No matter how desperate a person's situation is, how stuck they are, they never lose hope from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَخَضَعَ لَهَا كُلُّ شَيْءٍ وَذَلَّ لَهَا كُلُّ شَيْءٍ. Everything is subjected to the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can defy the power of God. No one. Yes, there are tyrants throughout history. There are stubborn, arrogant people throughout history who have tried to defy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us His power. How many tyrants have come with so much power, with civilizations behind them. And in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them history. They lost everything in this life before the next life. I'll conclude with this short story. It has been narrated that once there was a man, a poor person, in one city in the Middle East, maybe about 2 centuries ago. This poor person, one day he goes to the bazaar, to the market, And there was a wealthy man over there who sometimes would help people. Sometimes when people would go to his store, he might give them some assistance. A man goes to him and he tells him, I'm really, really hungry. For 3 days, I have not had any food. Can you please just give me something? Give me some food to eat. He says, no, leave. You're annoying me or harassing me. This is not the time that I give help. Come on another day. He says, please. What do you mean on another day? I'm telling you for 3 days I've not had food. He says, no, come on another day. He saw him very arrogant. So the poor man told the businessman, this big merchant, he told him, look, why are you so arrogant and you talk to me like that? Allah can take your wealth in a minute. All this wealth that you have, all these lands, properties, stores, money, Allah can take it away. Don't be so arrogant. Allah has given you this wealth. In a moment of arrogance and disbelief, you know what this man said? He told him, look, you poor man, God needs 6 months to think how He can take away my wealth. That's how wealthy I am. Allahu Akbar. Look at the arrogance. Now, brothers and sisters, you might find that this is an utter statement of disbelief, but you know, to an extent, sometimes we have these thoughts, sometimes. Maybe we don't say them the way this guy said them, but sometimes our actions, our stances in life do show this type of arrogance. The poor man told him, now that you've said this, watch what's going to happen. Let's see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do to you. The man, he disregarded him. The son of this businessman was the friend of the son of the king of that city. And this city was Isfahan, about maybe 2 centuries ago. There was a king, a ruler who ruled that city. The son of this businessman was the friend of the king's son. That same day, the son of this businessman was out with the son of the king to hunt. They were friends. They would go out hunting. And you know, kings and their sons, they love hunting. This was very common in the past. Now, as they were hunting, the son of the businessman, this arrogant guy, he accidentally shot an arrow at the son of the king instead of shooting it at a deer. He accidentally shot the son of the king. When he reached him, he realized that the son of the king is dying, and within minutes he died. The news reaches who? The king. Your son, who's your heir to the throne, who's supposed to be the king after you, the next guy in line, he's been killed. Imagine what happened to the king. He was outrageous. How did he die? Who killed him? Oh, he was hunting. Accidentally he was killed. Who killed him? The son of this businessman. In a moment of anger, the king made an open declaration to all of his city that all of the wealth, all of the properties, all of the belongings of this businessman is for the nation. People stormed into the streets, looting his shops, taking his farmlands. Even his own house was raided, and they looted the valuable objects that he had. Later that day at sunset, he looked at his house. He looked at his belongings. Everything was gone except the clothes that he had. Within hours, he lost all of his wealth. He was in shock, in disbelief. When he was passing in the alleys, not knowing where to go, even his own house was confiscated, he saw that poor man. That poor man whom he saw hours earlier. Earlier in the day, maybe at noontime. The poor man went to him. He told him, looks like Allah really did need those 6 months, to take your wealth. An act of disbelief. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His power prevails over everything. And Allah gives us these lessons because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to test us. Maybe sometimes Allah will allow us to get away with certain things. Allah may not immediately show us some results to test us. But in the end, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His power will prevail. وَبِقُوَّتِكَ الَّتِي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us in our gathering tonight. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us our needs. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.